Hello, Portobello Police Station. PC Latif speaking. Lothian Borders Police.
However, having come from an Indian background, my outlook on life was different.
They said, "You're getting in, son, but I don't want you to cause any problem." And what is that you call it? Putting his finger on top of his head, and he didn't know what it's called. I said, "Is that a turban?" So that was the reason I didn't wear a turban.
We asked our son to join the police force. He says, no way. He said, they're racist.
If they really wanted to change the culture of the policing in Scotland, you have to have more people from the minority to learn their race, religion, their culture, and they can learn how to deal with the minority ethnic community.
I used to work down at Woodlands, and there's quite a lot of ethnic minorities there, and quite a lot of elderly folk, and they'll come up and speak to you. I'm bilingual, so they can speak to me in Punjabi or Urdu, and they're quite happy.
I think I was psychologically damaged as a child because my mum bought me a policeman's uniform when I was 6. And at the time, Doctor Who's assistant was Roy Castle, who was, of course, a policeman. So there I'm watching Doctor Who in a policeman's uniform, and then some 20 years later, my parents go, "Raj, why do you want to become a policeman?" I'm thinking, hello, you bought me the policeman's uniform.
One Scotland, many cultures, the slogan on a recent advertising campaign celebrating ethnic diversity in Scotland. I'm Ravi Sagoo, and in this programme I'm going to chart the history of our ethnic presence within our Scottish police forces. Do they reflect the ethnic makeup of our society? Are they really welcomed by the forces themselves and the public at large? For Dilawar Singh, Scotland's first Asian policeman, he fulfilled a childhood ambition when he joined Strathclyde Police in 1968.
I wanted to be a police officer. Actually, what I did do was I joined the specials to find out what the issues, what the challenges, and whether I would fit into that. So I was a special constable to begin with, and then I joined the regular service because one of my first cases went to High Court and it was all over the papers. I think that gave me incentive to say, well, you're doing well, so carry on. So from then on, I never looked back.
My name's Swarnjit Burmy. I joined the City of Glasgow Police in 1975. I was the first coloured policewoman in Scotland. The media covered it quite a bit. The radio, television, the newspapers.
It's no longer newsworthy when a member of the black and ethnic minority community, also known as BME, signs up. But have the numbers really increased that much over 40 years in Scotland? Former Chief Inspector and Head of Race Relations for Strathclyde Police, Tom Harrigan.
Well, it's obviously increased. But when I left the police service about 2.5 years ago, if I remember correctly, there was about 75 black minority ethnic officers within Strathclyde Police. Now I'm led to believe the figures are around about 135, which is a substantial increase in 2.5 years. And I think that's really good for the service.
We asked Grampian Police Force to take part in this documentary. They refused. However, here's Inspector Audrey Laird, Diversity Officer for Fife Constabulary.
For diversity, we would try to replicate what there is within the community. So for Fife, as a community, the percentage is just over 1%. We have 13 black or minority ethnic staff at this time. That's staff that have classified themselves as being so on our computer systems. That comprises 6 police officers, 6 police staff, and 1 special constable. So we've got quite a mix there. So we're not actually too far off there. We actually just employ over 1,700 members of staff, so we're not too far out there.
These stats quoted by police authorities seem to be very positive, but Sandra Dayland Clark of BME support organisation Semper Scotland says these figures are not as straightforward as it seems.
One of our main concern is the analysis of the data that they collect based on self-classification. The figures that the police publish do not identify visible minority ethnic. It doesn't tell you white minority ethnic or black minority ethnic. And actually, the community wants to know. That's what they're interested in which figure is for which. They don't necessarily want them lumped together. We're also concerned about the analysis of the workforce because the figures for BME staff also includes cadets and special constables who are not strictly speaking employees of the service. And finally, in the official police monitoring figures, the ethnic percentage of the minority ethnic community is incorrect. It's way out of date as it's based on the last census. So the service need a more realistic target to chase. And we in Semper Scotland know that there are ways to go about doing that to make it more realistic.
Maybe the figures aren't so positive for visibly black and ethnic minorities, but getting into the force is the first hurdle. The first Scottish Asian officer, Dilawar Singh, remembers his initial interview at Govan Police Station well. It wasn't so straightforward.
I was taken in by one of the bar officers to this scale. He weighed me because I did loads of exercise. I was, reasonably fit. I did wrestling, Highland Games, etc. So there was no issues, and I wasn't overweight. And the only thing was that he couldn't see anything else, and he says, "Well, you're too short." So he chased me. I says, "Well, sorry, son, you're too short. You can't join the police." So the following week, I went to the same office with the same form but different officer because I knew, had it been something else, I could have possibly accepted that, but I knew I was half an inch taller than what the height requirement was. So I went to the same office, different bar officer, same scale, and once he took me to that and he says, "That's fine." I call myself, I'm the man who grew an inch within a week. So that's the first hurdle. Openly, people will not discriminate. That you've got to be stupid to do that. But for me to sit here and speak to you to say there isn't any issues, there are major issues in some departments.
Back in the mid-70s, for Lothian and Border's first Asian officer, Dinesh Joshi, it was convincing the family that a life fighting crime was a laudable career.
My mother expressed concern that I was going to be the first Asian police officer. How would people react to me? How the community would react? Because within the Asian community, and especially the Indian community, children are always encouraged to become doctors or lawyers or accountants.
Glasgow-born Raj Kohli is now a chief inspector with the Metropolitan Police.
Back home in India, Pakistan, whichever sort of part of the Indian subcontinent you're from, police officers are considered almost lower than working class. The people that you can bribe to get things done. It's not considered a profession.
But for Dinesh Joshi, perseverance paid off.
I managed to convince my mother that it was not the case, that I was doing something different because, one, I felt that I wanted to serve the community in which I lived, and two, I wanted to be a part of the community and deliver something back to the community in which I was living. And number three, which was the most important one for me, was I wanted to be the first guy to join the police service.
But for the young rookie, Dinesh Joshi, the challenges of being an Asian PC hit home even before he reported for his first shift.
I had been accepted in the police service and I was walking back from the town and I saw a police car parked just near to the shop. So I thought, well, these are the people I'm going to be working with in Dalkeith. So I started making my way towards the individual to try and speak to him. And as I approached him, the car just looked at me and the guy suddenly drove away. I was going to the police station the next day to start my shift, and that was my first shift. And luckily, maybe for me and unluckily for the other guy, he was the same guy that was sitting in the car the day before. So I said to him, "Did I not see you yesterday?" And I said, "I was coming to speak to you and you drove away." He says, "Look, forgive me," he said, "but I just didn't know how to deal with you." And that to me made me realize that for him, it was the first time that he was actually seeing somebody from a black community coming to join the police service. So he thought, my God, what is this coming here? And I thought, well, what have I let myself into?